Climbing the steps of the Providence Municipal Court was always a challenge for Lieutenant James Reeves. He had lost a significant portion of his right leg in an IED attack in Afghanistan, replaced with a metal prosthetic. On rainy days, his old wound would throb, making his prosthetic feel even heavier. Today was such a day. At the courthouse entrance, James paused. He pulled a crumpled yellow slip from his pocket, a $250 parking ticket, issued by Senior Officer Derek Thompson. Unauthorized use of handicapped parking space, the ticket read. James repeated to himself, "My disabled placard was clearly displayed." He still didn't believe me, he muttered under his breath. Let's see what Judge Caprio has to say. Just then, a man in a black robe approached from the end of the corridor. Judge Frank Caprio was 75 years old and one of Providence's most beloved legal figures. His hair had grayed, the lines on his face had deepened with age, but the sharp intelligence in his eyes had never dimmed. "Good morning, son," said Caprio, smiling at James. "Need any help?" James shook his head. "No, thank you, Your Honor. I'm here for a hearing." Caprio nodded. "See you then." James thought Judge Caprio didn't recognize him. After all, Providence was a big city, and hundreds of people passed through the courthouse every day. But Caprio's son warmed his heart. It reminded him of his father's voice. The courtroom opened at 9 a.m. Several traffic cases were heard before James's turn came. When the clerk called out, "James Reeves," he stood up and approached the bench. His difficulty walking was evident. "Mr. Reeves," said Caprio, looking over his glasses, "I see you've been cited for unauthorized use of a handicapped parking space?" "Yes, Your Honor," said James, "but I'm contesting this ticket. My disabled placard was hanging from my rearview mirror. Officer Thompson didn't believe me." "Is Officer Thompson present?" Caprio asked. A uniformed police officer in his 40s rose from the back rows. With his sharp jawline and stern gaze, he embodied authority. "Yes, Your Honor. Senior Officer Derek Thompson," he said. "Officer Thompson, can you explain the situation?" asked Caprio. Thompson stepped forward, clasping his hands behind his back. "Your Honor, on May 17, while on patrol, I observed a vehicle in the handicapped parking area at Providence Shopping Center. There was no disabled placard or plate visible. The driver, Mr. Reeves, exited the vehicle and entered the shopping center. He showed no signs of walking difficulty." James opened his mouth to object, but Caprio raised his hand to stop him. "Continue, Officer Thompson." "I saw Mr. Reeves return to his car and approached him. I asked him why he was using the handicapped space. He told me he had a disabled placard, but there was no visible placard in the vehicle, so I issued the citation." Caprio nodded. "Mr. Reeves, what's your response to Officer Thompson's statement?" James took a deep breath. "Your Honor, my disabled placard was hanging from my rearview mirror. I showed it to Officer Thompson, but he didn't believe me. He suggested it might have fallen." "Do you have your disabled placard with you?" "May I see it?" asked Caprio. James pulled a blue disabled placard from his pocket and handed it to the court officer. The officer gave it to Caprio. "This placard is valid," said Caprio after examining it. "Issued in 2021 and valid until 2026. Caprio turned back to Thompson. "Officer, did Mr. Reeves show you this placard?" "Yes, Your Honor, but it wasn't displayed when he parked," Thompson said firmly. "Mr. Reeves?" Caprio asked. "My placard was hanging, Your Honor. Maybe it fell due to the wind. I don't know, but it was definitely hanging." Caprio looked thoughtful. Then, an unexpected silence fell over the courtroom. Caprio was about to ask something but hesitated. "Mr. Reeves, may I ask why you have a disabled placard?" he finally said. James looked slightly uncomfortable. "I was injured while serving in Afghanistan, Your Honor. I lost a significant portion of my right leg." Caprio's expression softened. "I understand. You served your country." James nodded. "Yes, as a lieutenant. 2nd Infantry Battalion, 5th Infantry Regiment." Caprio looked at Officer Thompson. A flicker of discomfort crossed the officer's face. "Officer Thompson, were you aware of this information?" Caprio asked. "No, Your Honor," said Thompson, averting his eyes. "I didn't know Mr. Reeves had a prosthetic leg." "Because I was wearing long pants," said James, "and I can walk pretty well with my prosthetic, but that doesn't mean I don't experience pain." A silence fell over the courtroom. Caprio pulled out a piece of paper from the file and examined it. "A video evidence has been submitted to the court," said Caprio. "Security camera from the shopping center. Let's watch it." The court officer started the video. On a large screen, James's car could be seen entering the handicapped parking space. James got out, walked, and entered the shopping center. Then from another angle, there was footage of him returning to his car. Officer Thompson approached him, they talked, then Thompson issued a ticket and left. "I can't tell exactly from the video," said Caprio. "We can't see inside the car. We can't determine if there was a placard hanging from the rearview mirror." Just then, a young woman in the courtroom stood up. "Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to say something." Caprio nodded. "Go ahead." "My name is Sarah Miller. I was working at the shopping center that day and was in the parking lot during the incident. There was a disabled placard in Mr. Reeves's car. I saw it clearly." Murmurs of surprise rose in the courtroom. Thompson's face reddened. "Are you certain, Ms. Miller?" asked Caprio. "Absolutely certain, Your Honor. In fact, I saw Officer Thompson approach the car and ignore the placard. It was as if he wanted to catch Mr. Reeves." Thompson immediately objected. "That's a lie, Your Honor. There was no placard in the car." Caprio gave Thompson a calm look. "Officer Thompson, why are you hesitating? Is there something going on?" Thompson hesitated. Everyone in the courtroom was waiting for his answer. Finally, his shoulders slumped. I thought Mr. Reeves wasn't disabled, Your Honor. He walked very well. I've seen so many cases of disabled placards being misused. Maybe I was a bit prejudiced." James looked surprised. "You wanted to catch me? But why?" Thompson didn't answer. Caprio examined the file with a thoughtful expression. "Officer Thompson, this kind of behavior damages the reputation of the police department," said Caprio. "You must treat every citizen with respect and honesty." Then he turned to James. "Mr. Reeves, thank you for your service to our community and our country. This court dismisses the citation issued to you." James looked relieved. "Thank you, Your Honor." But Caprio wasn't finished yet. "However, I have other concerns in this case. There's a serious discrepancy between Officer Thompson's statement and Ms. Miller's statement." Caprio pressed a button on his desk. "Ms. Rodriguez, please call Chief Harper." A few minutes later, Police Chief Robert Harper entered the courtroom. He was a solid man in his 50s. "Chief Harper," said Caprio, "I have serious concerns about Officer Thompson's conduct. It appears he may have deliberately issued an unjust ticket to a veteran." Harper gave Thompson a stern look. "If this allegation is true, it's a serious problem, Your Honor." "I want you to investigate this matter," said Caprio, "and I request that you report the results to this court." Harper nodded. "Of course, Your Honor." Finally, Caprio turned to James. "Mr. Reeves, I hope justice has been served today. However, I understand this incident has been disturbing for you. If you wish, we can help you prepare an official complaint file against the police department." James thought for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "No, Your Honor. I don't want to file an official complaint." Murmurs of surprise rose in the courtroom. Even Caprio seemed a bit surprised. "Are you sure, Mr. Reeves?" he asked. "Yeah," said James. "There's something I learned in Afghanistan. Sometimes the greatest battles are won not with weapons, but with understanding. Officer Thompson made a mistake today, but I want to give him a chance to correct his mistake." Thompson looked confused. "I don't understand. Why?" James turned to Thompson. "Because I've made mistakes too, Officer Thompson, and someone gave me a second chance. Maybe now it's my turn." A deep silence fell over the courtroom. A sparkle appeared in Caprio's eyes. "That's a very noble attitude, Mr. Reeves," said Caprio. "However, I believe Officer Thompson's behavior should have consequences." "It might, Your Honor," said James. "But my complaint won't be among those consequences." Caprio thought, then nodded. "All right, I respect Mr. Reeves's wishes. However, Chief Harper, I still want you to conduct your investigation." "Of course, Your Honor," said Harper. "This hearing is adjourned," said Caprio, striking his gavel on the desk. As James was leaving, Thompson approached him. There was shame on his face. "Mr. Reeves," he said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, truly." James looked at the man. "Why did you do this, Officer Thompson?" Thompson hesitated. I also served in the military, Iraq. But many of my friends like me didn't return. And you? You walked so comfortably with your prosthetic. I don't know, maybe jealousy, maybe anger. It's absurd, I know. Understanding appeared on James's face. You've experienced trauma too, haven't you? Thompson nodded. PTSD, I'm in treatment, but sometimes it's hard. I understand, said James. I went through the same process. Why didn't you file a complaint against me? Thompson asked. Because maybe instead of a complaint, you need a friend, said James. Maybe someday we can have a coffee and talk. Thompson's eyes welled up. I'm grateful, Mr. Reeves. Call me James, and maybe on your next patrol, you'll find someone who really isn't disabled, said James, smiling slightly. A month later, Chief Harper came to Judge Caprio's chambers. We've completed the investigation, Your Honor, said Harper. Officer Thompson's behavior was definitely out of protocol. We've given him a 2-week unpaid leave and mandatory sensitivity training. How did he take the decision? Asked Caprio. Surprisingly, he didn't object, said Harper. In fact, he said he wanted to volunteer for a program working with disabled veterans. Caprio smiled. Sometimes the most unexpected events lead to the most beautiful changes, Chief Harper. For your information, Mr. Reeves and Officer Thompson were seen together last week, said Harper, sitting in a cafe, talking for hours. Good, said Caprio. Very good. After Chief Harper left, Caprio looked at a photograph on his desk. In the photo, he was a young soldier in the Vietnam War. He too had returned with his own wounds, his own traumas, and he too had healed over time. Sometimes justice is more than punishment, he murmured to himself. 6 months later, a special ceremony was held at Providence City Hall. A new program called Justice for Veterans was being launched. Among the founders were James Reeves and, surprisingly, Derek Thompson. This program, said James, speaking at the podium, is designed to understand and solve the legal challenges veterans face. We will provide training to police officers and legal authorities about war trauma and different forms of disability. Thompson also took the podium. He was no longer wearing his uniform. He was in civilian clothes. From my own experiences, I know, he said, that sometimes our greatest barriers aren't physical, but in our minds. This program will help both veterans and the authorities who interact with them. During the ceremony, Judge Caprio was sitting among the crowd. As he applauded, there was a proud expression in his eyes. After the ceremony, James and Thompson came to him. Your Honor, said James, you played a major role in starting this program. Seeing both of you grow from this experience is the greatest reward for me, said Caprio. You know, said James, that day in court, you called me son. When we met in the corridor, you reminded me of my father's voice. Caprio smiled. Sometimes a small kindness can lead to big changes. Thompson nodded. That's true. And sometimes in the most unexpected situations, the most valuable friendships are formed. As the three men left the ceremony, they walked side by side in the sunny streets of Providence. They had come from different lives, different experiences, but now they were working together for a common purpose, and it all started with a parking ticket. A year later, the Justice for Veterans program began to gain national recognition. Other cities were starting similar programs. James and Thompson were frequently invited to give speeches. One day, a national TV channel wanted to interview them. The host curiously asked, "Would you tell us about that court day that led to the start of this extraordinary program?" James and Thompson looked at each other and smiled. It all started with a misunderstanding, said James, and continued with a judge's wisdom. And was completed with the power of forgiveness, added Thompson. Forgiveness? Asked the host. Mr. Reeves, Officer Thompson had wronged you. How could you forgive him so easily? James thought. It wasn't easy, but there's something I learned in war. Anger and grudges only hurt the one carrying them. Forgiving was something I did for myself. What about you, Mr. Thompson? How did you face your mistake? Thompson sighed. It was hard, but the understanding James showed, it changed my life. Now I don't just see my own trauma. I understand others have gone through similar things. And what was Judge Caprio's role in this? Judge Caprio, said James, isn't just someone who dispenses justice. He's someone who gives people second chances. And sometimes a second chance is all it takes to change a life. That evening, Judge Frank Caprio was watching television at home. James and Thompson's interview was being broadcast. He watched with a smile. As the interview was ending, the host asked, "Finally, "Do you have a message for Judge Caprio?" "Yes," said James and turned towards the camera. "Your Honor, if you're watching us, I want to tell you this. Justice isn't just about enforcing laws. Justice is the chance to change people's lives. And every day, you give this chance to people. Thank you for that." Caprio sat quietly in front of the television. His eyes had welled up. Throughout his long career, he had presided over thousands of cases, made thousands of decisions. But perhaps his most important decisions were made in the moments when he chose to understand rather than punish. Outside, the lights of Providence were shining, and in the dark streets of a city, hope lights were glowing. Because sometimes the most powerful form of justice wasn't punishment, but forgiveness. And sometimes the biggest changes came from the most unexpected moments. Caprio remembered one last time, the day he returned from Vietnam as a young soldier. He too had found his way, and now he was helping others find their ways. Justice, he whispered, doesn't just live in laws but in people's hearts. And perhaps that was Judge Frank Caprio's greatest legacy.